Friends, are you worried about the future of paper? That is the question of the hour. Welcome to Studio Classroom on the Air. My name is Gabe.
And I'm Anne-Marie. It's a great question for us to think about. What are we doing to help save the trees of our planet? Gabe, do you always print things onto double-sided paper?
You know, I don't usually. And because I had read this lesson about paper and our world being in danger, I thought, this time I'll print everything on two sides of our paper, but
it looks like we didn't do that.
And so I thought, well, maybe I'll just reprint it on double-sided, and then that would actually waste more paper. So no,
right.
I didn't. It's a good reminder, though.
Well, our world is in danger, and another word for danger is peril. As we see in our title, Paper Peril.
It's true. Well, our lesson presents us with a choice right at the beginning: recycle or suffer the consequences. I hope we never figure out what those consequences are.
Better keep recycling, or start recycling for some of you. Today is a great day to learn something new.
So friends, let's do that together. Paper peril. We all face a simple choice: recycle or suffer the consequences. Paper is one of our oldest, simplest, and most important inventions. But it also presents a danger to the world in two significant ways. First, the making of paper requires the loss of many millions of trees each year. According to The World Counts, between 2001 and 2019, the world lost a total of 386 million hectares of forest. Of the trees that were cut down, 42% went to paper production. That represents a significant portion of the world's forests.
Hello everyone, welcome to Language Lab. I'm Jack. 今天先来看标题里边这个字 peril。peril 是名词，意思是极大的危险。譬如说 Josh never considered the perils of hiking in the mountains alone until he got lost. Josh 在迷路之前从来没想过单独登山的危险。或者One peril to consider before building a house by a river is the risk of flooding. 在河边盖房子之前要考虑的一个危险是洪水的风险。或是 Pressure to use drugs is the biggest peril students face at that school. 在那个学校里，学生受到压力而去吸毒，是他们所面临的最大的危险。再来看 production 这个名词。在课文里面的意思是生产制造，譬如说 The majority of America's cheese production takes place in the state of Wisconsin. 在美国大多数的乳酪都是在威斯康星州生产的。或者 5 factories decreased their rates of production due to lack of raw materials. 有5家工厂因为缺乏原料而降低了生产率。另外，节目的制作也可以用 production 来表达。例如 While in New York, Ben and Josephine went to a Broadway production of Shakespeare's Hamlet. Ben 跟 Josephine 在纽约的时候，去百老汇看了一场莎士比亚的舞台剧作《哈姆雷特》。Okay, let's get back to our teachers.
Thank you very much, Jack. All right, friends, let's get into this.What I think is a very important lesson. We're talking about saving the trees, really, and not using too much paper, something that I need to do a better job of. Our lesson, of course, is paper peril.
Well, let's get right into it then. We all face a simple choice: recycle or suffer the consequences. Well, that sounds pretty serious, doesn't it?
Exactly. Well, friends, I know a lot of you are pretty used to recycling now. At a lot of places, there are recycling bins or trash cans that are only for certain things like paper or glass or bottles or things like that. So we saw a phrase here, recycle or suffer the consequences. You also saw the word face. Sometimes we use the word face with a consequence or the word suffer. You need to face the consequences. That means you need to go and deal with the consequences. To suffer the consequence means to deal with or experience the unpleasant effects of something.
Maybe your parents have told you before, get home on time or suffer the consequences. That means that if you are not here when you're supposed to be, maybe there'll be some kind of punishment or some kind of unpleasant situation that you might have to deal with.
That's right. You might be punished. Maybe you'll be grounded. Have you ever been grounded? That's when your parents don't let you leave the house to go out with your friends for a period of time. Did you ever have to suffer that consequence, Anne-Marie?
I don't know that I've ever been grounded before.
No, okay.
But I did have some friends that were, and it was not pleasant for them.
No, of course it's not pleasant. Well, let's get back to paper peril here. Paper is one of our oldest, simplest, and most important inventions. When I think of important inventions, I also think of the straw or the wheel. The wheel is super important for getting us around and for getting things around. But we read on here, but it also presents a danger to the world in two significant ways. When you present a danger, that means you're kind of introducing the idea of a danger, something that we should be concerned about.
We read on, first, the making of paper requires the loss of many millions of trees every year. So right there, you can already start to see one of those consequences we were talking about in that first line. Losing millions of trees, that sounds like a big problem.
Exactly, and that's referring to the making of paper. We might use the word manufacturing, okay? So paper manufacturing requires the loss of many trees. According to the World Counts, between 2001 and 2019, the world lost a total of 386 million hectares of forest.
Wow.
That's quite a lot.
It is a lot. And our article says of the trees that were cut down, 42% went to paper production. So out of all of those trees that were cut down, 42, that's really almost 50% of the trees went into making paper.
Exactly. Now, you used the phrase out of, and our lesson just says the word of the trees. Now, let's talk about the usage of the word of, and why did we put it at the beginning of this sentence? Really, we could rephrase the sentence, 42% of the trees that were cut down went to paper production. But sometimes we can put the word and that phrase at the beginning of the sentence to emphasize that as the subject more.
And our article goes on to say that represents a significant portion of the world's forests. You know, I can think of a forest-related phrase right now that I think we should share.
Oh yeah, what is that forest-related phrase?
Can't see the forest.
Oh, for the trees!
Yes!
Oh, you can't see the forest for the trees. That's kind of a great idiom, friends. This means that you can't see the whole picture because you're focusing too much on some of the details.
That's right. Well, right now we are going to talk a little bit more about this idea of recycling.
All right.
And let's do that in today's Info Cloud.
Hi friends, welcome to Info Cloud. Rex, have you heard the phrase reduce, reuse, and recycle?
Yes, Andrea, that's a great phrase to encourage people to be mindful of waste and to recycle.
Yes, you're right. This is probably one of the most popular phrases or slogans to do that. But did you know that there are over 100 slogans in English to help remind people to recycle and to take care of the earth?
I didn't realize there were that many. What's another one?
Don't throw away, recycle for another day.
That's clever. Many people are worried about what our planet will look like in the future with all the trash we have in our world.
Yes. So before you throw something away, think about how you can recycle it instead for the future or for another day. Don't throw away, recycle for another day.
Oh, I have one. Just think before you bin it. There could be some use in it.
Yes. Many homes have a recycling bin. That's the container where you put items you want to recycle instead of putting them in the trash. We also use this word bin for a trash bin.
So just think before you bin it. Before you put your garbage in a trash bin or a recycling bin, there could be some use in it.
Right. Like before putting a glass container in a recycling bin, you could use it again to store food or as a jar to store something.
在现今的世代，各国都在倡导 recycling 资源回收。今天跟大家介绍几个国外人士常用的资源回收口号，像是 reduce, reuse and recycle， 减量使用、重复使用以及回收。Reduce, reuse and recycle 是最常使用的一句资源回收口号。另外还有 Don't throw away, recycle for another day， 意思就是不要丢掉，回收它，让它在另外一天可以被使用。Don't throw away, recycle for another day 有押韵，让人更容易记得。说到押韵，还有一句是 Just think before you bin it, there could be some use in it. Bin it 是丢进垃圾桶。Just think before you bin it 就是丢进垃圾箱之前，先想一想 there could be some use in it. 这个东西或许还有其他的用途。这就是今天的 Info Cloud， 我们下次云端见。
Studio Classroom is on the air.
Welcome back to Studio Classroom. We're learning with a lesson called Paper Peril today.
Earlier, we learned that over the last couple of years, 42% of the trees that were cut down went to paper production.
Clearly, it's important to reuse paper products. Clearly, it's important for us to think of ways to recycle paper. And I believe that the next fact that we read about will help us see more clearly how big a problem this really is.
So let's continue right now with Paper Peril.
Paper peril. And worldwide use of paper is projected to double in the next 40 years. Clearly, the planet cannot sustain such a high rate of forest loss. The second great problem with paper is what happens once it is no longer useful. A huge quantity of waste paper ends up in dumps and landfills where it can produce harmful gases. Paper in landfills contributes to the release of methane, a gas that is a significant factor in global climate change. One simple solution can greatly reduce both of these problems: paper recycling. Instead of cutting down trees, recycle existing paper to feed the paper-making process.
“再来看 sustain 这个动词，意思是承受、支撑。例如 ，The company sustained huge losses due to a fire in the warehouse。因为仓库失火，使得这家公司承受了极大的损失。或者 ，We have enough food and water to sustain us for 5 days。我们有足够的食物和水，可以撑5天。sustain 也有维持的意思，譬如。The planet Mars is incapable of sustaining life as we know it. 根据目前所知，火星上没有维持生物生存的条件。最后，我们来看 landfill 这个名词，意思是垃圾掩埋场。例如 ，The city plans to build a recreational center on top of a landfill. 市政府计划在这个垃圾掩埋场上面盖一座休闲活动中心，或者。Our city has a very effective recycling program, so the amount of waste it puts in its landfill is low. 我们的城市有一个非常有效的回收方案，所以丢到掩埋场的垃圾量很低。再来看一个例句 ：Systems at some landfills collect the methane gas produced in the waste and sell it as a source of energy. 有些垃圾掩埋场的系统能收集废弃物产生的沼气，然后以能源的形式出售。All right, let's get back to our teachers.
Thank you very much, Jack. Well, we read on here. Worldwide use of paper is projected to double in the next 40 years. This is a terrible idea, and so that you can understand why it's a terrible idea, you need to know what the word project means here, okay? This has the idea of calculated, okay? Calculated based on the information that we already know. So we already know the rate at which trees are being cut down, so it's projected, kind of like predicted, of what will happen in the future.
This phrase kind of has the idea of expected to as well, but it's a little bit more certain than that.
Yeah.
For example, you could say that a company is projected to have a loss this quarter. That means that that company, maybe if it was a sales company, they didn't sell enough things already, so it looks like at the rate they're going, at the end, they're going to have a loss. And that's what we're talking about here. Because of how much paper we're using now, it's probably, very probable, and projected that we will be using this much paper in the next 40 years.
Exactly. And Anne-Marie, I really like that phrase you used, at the rate they're going. I think that's a great phrase for you to know when thinking about something that's predicted to be a certain way in the future. If we continue at this rate, then we're going to be out of paper, okay, in 40 years. Clearly, the planet cannot sustain such a high rate of forest loss, all right? The second great problem with paper is what happens once it is no longer useful.
Let's find out what that is. A huge quantity of waste paper ends up in dumps and landfills. Now, landfill was one of those words from the language lab that you learned earlier, but what does it mean if something ends up in a landfill?
Yeah, well, something like a bunch of waste paper like this paper and cardboard all stacked together. If something ends up somewhere, that means it comes to that final place or that condition. Sometimes it was not expected. You don't know how something is going to end up, but the paper is going to end up in landfills.
And it says that it can produce harmful gases. So that's the problem with all of that paper going to the landfills. Paper in landfills contributes to the release of methane, a gas that is a significant factor in global climate change.
Now, friends, methane is one of those common chemical words like oxygen or carbon dioxide. Methane is the main ingredient in natural gas, and when I think of methane, I think of what cows produce. If you studied well in chemistry, you know that methane is CH4.
Now, I have heard that one of the greatest producers of methane on the planet is factory farming. Have you heard of factory farming before?
Is that farming factories?
No, not farming factories. It's farming animals, such as cows, for a purpose to make a product. For example, hamburgers or meat that people eat. They're producing it at a very, very high rate.
Okay, so that is factory farming.
Yes.
So Anne-Marie, I assume you also think of cows when you think of methane.
I do.
And like maybe gas you use for your home.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah, do you think of paper when you think of methane?
I have never thought of paper in regards to methane before.
Yeah, but it's a huge problem, right? And paper contributes to the methane problem in our world. Well, we continue here. One simple solution can greatly reduce both of these problems: paper recycling. Instead of cutting down trees, recycle existing paper to feed the paper making process.
I can think of another word to put in that spot where we see the word feed there.
What do you mean?
You could put the word fuel in there as well.
Yeah, but fuel is... Oh, yeah. Sometimes we use the word fuel in kind of a fun way to talk about adding to something, right? Because you add fuel to a fire and it makes the flames grow bigger.
That's exactly right. Well, friends, right now it is time to go to our Biz Buzz. Are you ready to learn something new?
When all are present, we can begin the slideshow.
Ooh, and is the slideshow complete?
Yes, I finished the slideshow last week. I also have your PowerPoint finalized, and the handouts and packages are all organized.
Wow, you are on the ball.
Yes, I am on the ball. Wait, I'm on the ball?
Yes, you are on the ball. You are alert and aware of all that we need for the workshop. You've been working hard and getting everything done ahead of time.
Oh, yes.
Yes! What did you think it meant?
Well, I guess I am on the ball.
Well, great job. So let's take a look at the attendee list.
It's right here in alphabetical order.
See? You really are on the ball. What you did here. Yeah.
All right, well, it is hard to be on the ball about everything because it's impossible to know everything about the future. But speaking of, what is something that you are concerned about that we don't see the immediate effects of? Anne-Marie, isn't it true that some of the world's biggest problems are because people in the past weren't even thinking they were going to be a problem in the future? And
Yeah, that's totally true. Like
Yeah.
even what we've been talking about here with paper.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've been harvesting paper for decades
Yeah,
now.
decades.
Yeah, and maybe in the beginning people didn't think it was a problem, and now
Mm-hmm.
we're getting to the point where we see there's effects that we weren't aware of in the past. I think something that maybe we'll find have negative effects
Mm-hmm.
in the future is social media and the way it affects young people.
okay, are you referring to the idea that when people use social media, it kind of reduces our attention spans, and so more people will have attention problems in the future?
Possibly what I'm thinking about is mental health.
Okay.
I think that when people use social media for a long amount of time, it can affect your mind.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe those effects won't be seen immediately. Maybe it will take years of using social media until we find out, oh, actually, that's really not good for you.
Yeah, that's true. That kind of reminds me of the idea of kind of limiting people's freedom of expression or freedom of speech, because I've kind of seen that happen in the United States over the past several years.
Are you talking about censorship?
Censorship, yeah, the idea that we want to encourage freedom of speech about whatever or expression, and yet in certain universities, especially, or different places, it's like people are kind of squelching that freedom. And I think over time, we're going to see some negative effects of that.
Well, that's a really good point.
Yeah. Well, earlier today, we talked about inventions, right? Paper was one of the most important inventions. I think, when people invented the plastic straw, they also didn't think about the negative effects that it would have over time. Friends, what's something else that we don't think about the immediate effects of, but maybe we should think about their effects long term? We'll see you next time right here on
Studio Classroom.